Testing 1 2 1 1. Testing 1.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
This is Douglas politics, yo. Douglas politics. Listen, Douglas politics, yeah. Douglas politics. This is Douglas politics, yeah. Douglas politics. This is Douglas politics. Douglas politics. This is Douglas politics, yo. Douglas politics. Listen.
I was begging him to stay, but I didn't want him to leave this side. I was begging him to stay, but I said, well, let me go back for you, man, and myself. I tell him that I'm sure he's gonna be here if I didn't go back at least 100% sure that nobody can tell me about all that shit about can't rescue people. I dive in a pipe before that and born inside the riser on same bird 6. I went inside that on that pipe herself, call him pipe. I went in that and put in a soft paper gasket because we couldn't install it from the outside because the surgeons was slamming against it. I went in the pipe on that scuba self. Barry, I'm talking all about scuba and scuba for all the years we diving in there. Scuba, every company coming there was scuba for all the years.
Welcome to Douglas Politics. Good night. So I'm Victor Roberts sitting in for Anil Roberts tonight. And with me tonight is none other than a professional, a member of parliament, a son of the soil. And I will ask first of all, as we begin tonight's proceedings, that our MP, Ruston Parry, is no stranger to Douglas Politics, to the Monday Night Forum, to press briefings inside and outside the parliament, and of course is a man who do all within his power to represent the people of his constituency. So MP, I want to welcome you to Douglas Politics in the absence of Anil Roberts, and I would like, first of all, that you introduce yourself professionally to Trinidad and Tobago on Douglas Politics, and also give us a little insight about your constituency.
Sure. Thank you for the invitation. Actually, this is my first time on Douglas Politics. I have assisted Anil from time to time in terms of information gathering on certain matters. But I'm privileged to be here to discuss various matters, some internal, some constituency issues as well that we may get into. But basically, it's Ruston Parry, MP for Mayaro. I am the opposition spokesperson on all matters involving trade and industry. And I lend support to MP Tanku at times, who shadows finance and the economy. Because, you know, trade and industry, it's connected to finance and the economy as well. Outside of that, I am an ICT professional. I've been in the industry for about 30 years. I've worked in the energy sector for all my life in terms of supporting systems in the energy sector as an IT professional. I'm a family man. I'm married. I have 3 young ladies, 3 daughters. And I spend a lot of my time working on a lot of constituency issues, championing issues in the constituency with the tools that we have. And that's something that is important, that, the general public understand that, an electrician has tools to do electrical services. A plumber has tools to do plumbing services. And as opposition MPs, we have tools that the Constitution have given us in terms of our ability to speak in Port of Spain in the Parliament, so that we can bring the matters of the constituency to the seat of government. We have the tools of legislative capacity. We have tools where we can speak on programs like Douglas Politics to raise issues. We have tools that we can, write letters to the editor, write ministries, liaise with ministers of government to resolve matters in your constituency. We do our best at the end of the day. At the end of the day, opposition MPs, we have no constitutional powers to give instructions to any government or any public servant. But by virtue of the influence of your office, you do have the ability to, bring a case, and out of the respect for your office, you get some things done. So it's a job that I give the greatest of respect to. I wear the office well, and I am sure I continue to do what I have to do without fear or favor, and I work for everybody in the constituency. When I became the MP, I became MP for everyone. And that is the manner in which I take my duty going forward.
So MP, we are in the realm of this inquiry into the Paria situation. Tell us, what do you think? You think that this commission of inquiry come at the appropriate time, or you believe that it could have been done earlier, or what's your thoughts along those lines?
So from a professional perspective, we are way too late in the game for a commission of inquiry. I know we were very strong. The United National Congress as a party, we demanded it. But the government has used every opportunity to slow it down. Remember, there were issues around staffing and chairs and pen and pencil and paper that was not provided to the current commission, so everything has taken a lot longer than it really should have. The other thing too, from my professional experience, my understanding of how these investigations work, this investigation could have been done with about 3 or 4 persons, and within a month could have been completed. But besides that, we are where we are here today, and testimonies have begun. And a lot of information has come out so far. I think we're heading into the 3rd or the 4th day, basically. I know yesterday Mr. Budram did some incredible work in terms of his recollection of the incident on that day. I know for many Trinidadians and Tobagonians, listening to Mr. Budram, he brought them into that pipe. He brought that experience that he shared inside the pipe. And I don't think anybody ever, not in their dreams, Victor, want to experience that. So the question is, and the scope of the Commission of Inquiry, and we must get this clear as well, the Commission of Inquiry scope is not to find guilt or innocence on anybody. The scope of the Commission of Inquiry is to find out what happened on the day, what went wrong, what should be the shared learnings, so that we will never have this incident again. And in the sector, in the industry, every worker who goes to work and turns up at 8 in the morning should be fit as a fiddle to go back home to their families at 4:30 in the evening. That is the objective of the Commission of Inquiry at the end of the day. So, in a nutshell, I know there have been some queries as, whether, somebody will get locked up, somebody will get charged, who will be charged for murder and so on. That is not in the scope of the inquiry. But we must also know that during the course of giving evidence, the Director of Public Prosecution has the power to listen in. And if he feels any evidence that is being provided carries any type of criminal behavior or criminal liability. My understanding is that he has the power to launch his own investigation outside of the COE and initialize any sort of criminal investigation on anyone. So it is not impossible. It may be improbable, but not impossible that coming out of this commission of inquiry, there may be criminal negligence on somebody's part. And we must also take into consideration that in our jurisdiction, there is no criminal liability on companies. So there is no corporate manslaughter or corporate murder, because our legislation doesn't allow that. You can have civil matters against companies and so on, but there is nothing in our legislation that provides for corporate criminal, murder, manslaughter, and so on. And perhaps in the future, that is something that any government should look at in terms of improving or giving strength to legislation to make corporations more responsible for the health, welfare, and safety of every employee that works within the organization.
So we have listened thus far to Mr. Boodram's testimony, and I know for a fact it creates a psychological and emotional mental strain to really go back into actually what went on that fateful day. Not only to go back into it, because I believe that's something that will live with him and die with him.
Yeah.
But the point I am making is that looking at the discourse, you would see the level of anguish and stress that Mr. Boodram is under, not because of being pressured to answer questions, but being brought back to the point where his friends, families, where they have lost their life in that given occasion. Do you think along the lines of any sort of, how I should describe that? Let me direct it this way. When you look at what he is going through at this particular time, would there be a avenue within the precincts of that inquiry where Mr. Boodram might be able to relax a day or so before he get back onto the stand, or it is something that have to be continuous?
No. My understanding is that his testimony is completed. From what I heard the commissioner said at the end of his interview, that he is not required for further testimony, but he is welcome. He is welcome to sit in every day if he shows desires to listen other testimony at the end of the day. So from what I heard the commissioner said, I don't think he's required to provide any testimony. Now remember, his testimony was really to give clarity to what he would have submitted in writing. Mm-hmm. So what happens, Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj's job really, he's not a defense attorney or a prosecuting attorney in this case. He is the attorney for the commission. And his job is to go through the documents and explain to the commissioners, what is being said, what is being done, and if there is need for further clarity, you would ask the persons who have submitted in writing, can you come before the tribunal on this day? We have a few questions based on your written testimony that is providing we need some clarity, and we would like you to come before us. Now, this is not like a United States senatorial a committee where you can compel by warrant, and then there is a fine and a charge if you refuse to come. Mm-hmm. In our system here, I don't think there's any compelling force to make you come. This is why you have some cases during commissions of inquiry, you'd have seen it in the Clico affair, where some people decide, I'm not turning up. We have it at joint select committees all the time, where we send invitation for some of our public officers to turn up, especially on state boards and so on,
right,
to come before joint select committees to give testimony and they blatantly refuse, and sometimes the chairman of these committees will write them and be very harsh in their writing. But we have no compelling force to compel them to come before us, like a court order. So if you have a court order, you are compelled by the law to turn up. Neither at the Joint Select Committee level, nor at my understanding of how the Commission of Inquiry works, you are invited to come and give evidence, but no compelling force.
Based on your professionalism and listening what has come out of the inquiry thus far, do you believe that all the safety measures were put in place before they allowed those divers to undertake that job?
From listening the testimony of Mr. Budram and listening the questions posed to him by the attorneys, and the attorneys were, Mr. Peterson were harping really on what you call the GSA, the job safety analysis, the permit to work systems, which are all part of the normal requirement when you're doing these type of high-risk hazardous jobs. Now, again, I cannot speak to what actually happened on that day. That will come out at the end of the inquiry, because there are several other pieces of testimony to come, I suspect. But in the industry, you know, you talk about this toolbox meeting, and one would have gotten the impression from the attorney's question that at the toolbox meeting, queries around the Delta P as a potential incident, because, you know, they were asking, was this Delta P considered at any time during the toolbox meetings? But Victor, toolbox meetings is exactly what it says. It's a toolbox meeting. So we're going to do this job. 5 of us, we sit around and we say, all right, what are the tools that you need? Everybody can operate it. Have we locked off the power? Have we put the locks on certain things so nobody can come and turn a motor on while we're working, and so on? And those things are cleared at that level. I know in the sector that I work in, there's something called a performing authority who signs off that yes, all these things have been discussed, we are okay, and he signs off and he gives the okay to start the job. Now, the work that Mr. Budram and LMC and they were doing is not your run-of-the-mill type of job.
Right.
And those type of activities, I can tell you, in my experience, you know, in the energy sector in Galeota, while, as I say, I'm not a diver, I'm not an oil man by any way, but because we provide support services to these organizations, you normally sit in all these meetings to give your views and so on. And what really should have happened is that a day or two before the job happened, all the players, PARIA, LMC, the Coast Guard, all the safety people should have been in a room, and you walk through step by step what is going to happen. And then there is a team sits and be devil advocate. If this does not happen and this happens, what's the next step? So in that particular meeting, the question about the Delta P would have come up, or should have come up, because it's a risk to divers doing this type of job. And what are the mitigations for it? What is the role of the Coast Guard? You know, what is the role of the HNC officer, the inspector? Who trips that lever for something to happen? These things are discussed at that meeting. And that meeting forms your permit to work. So during the inquiry, you'd have seen a list of about 60 items to make sure this is done, that is done, that is done, that is done. And so the permit to work system is filled out before the job is done, where the company says, right, this is basically from the scope, this is what needs to be done. And what was missing from the permit to work was, and I think Mr. Gilbert Peterson, I think is his name, he raised the matter that nowhere in the permit to work did they ask to deflate the plug. And Mr. Budram's response was, look, they don't have to write every single item line by line, but to install the flange that they were installing, you need to remove the plug. The question I would ask is, who gave the all clear to deflate the plug? Now, that plug should have only been deflated if the line had liquid in the line. So if the line had liquid and the plug is deflated to remove it, to install the riser, then the pressure, there was no suction pressure to pull the guys in. So I think the commission of inquiry really needs to find out where the ball was dropped. Not necessarily who dropped it, but what caused the ball to be dropped. Because in my thinking, why was the plug removed without somebody saying that the line is charged with liquid? Now, perhaps that may have been missed somewhere. Perhaps somebody is going to ask that question. From most of the testimony that I've heard, it's something that happens normally where you get comfortable, Victor. So there's a process of your permit. Okay, write it out, somebody signs it. The GSA comes, we take a few bucks, somebody signs it. You had the toolbox meeting, we talk for 5 minutes, we say we had a toolbox meeting. And then we proceed to do the work. By our experience, we get comfortable. And it's only when an incident like this happens, then we pull back, and it's unfortunate that that 4 men lost their life. For us to have this conversation, you know, we have to take some of these things very, very seriously. You know, when you are doing these types of jobs, the procedure was developed by people who know a lot more than both of us sitting here. And it would have been built from the experience in other locations, in other jurisdictions, from jurisdictions that may have had similar events, and they are sharing their experience so that not another person loses their life. So when you have Mr. Budram saying that, you know, he has, you know, he dive into Bird 6, a riser in Bird 6, and he has experience, you know, with scuba gear. And the common thing really is that the rules may have said that you must have commercial gear. And yet, but for years, the company is using scuba divers and scuba gears, and it's been working fine, so why change it? So it means that in coming out of this inquiry, we need to understand what is the right thing to do. You know, if the guys had commercial gear, would they have been sucked in? According to Mr. Budram, he would have been a dead man if he had the commercial gear. His head might have ripped out completely. So scuba gear saved his life. But it comes back down when you have multiple activities happening in one job. There must be a clear understanding of who is doing what and when. Because to me, the mystery that I still need to figure out, or still need to hear, is how come that line had air rather than liquid? Because from the video that they showed, right, so you saw one of the divers dive into the water, comes up into the bell, hands the spanner, which is what they were requiring based on Mr. Budram's testimony. And as the person makes 2 crank, the camera goes kind of blank and cloudy. That means the water filled the bell shortly afterwards. And there's when he describes this kind of tornado type effect, and he was sucked into the pipe. So how did that line, why wasn't that line energized with liquid? And whose responsibility it was to check that at the end? I think that is the key thing in terms of the shared learnings. But it also means that we need to pay more attention to those permitting systems. Just don't do it as a checkbox that you check it off, because these things have serious liability at the end of the day, especially when you have the loss of life. No amount of compensation in the world will be enough for those families to bring back the fathers. Let me just
interject there. Seeing the level of risk that exists with this job, wouldn't it be a part of the safety apparatus, so to speak, that these divers should have least have some safety line attached to them while doing this type of job, seeing that the risk exists, that the possibility exists, what can happen is what really happened. But if they had some sort of, my question really is, if they were tied off as to some level, then I believe that a rescue operation would have been much easier. And a matter of fact, whether the line would have been able to hold the pressure that pulled them in or not is another discussion. But at least I think some chance would have been available if they had some line that they had tied off based on the risk that exists with that job.
I'll share a story with you about something that happened in Galeota about 15 years ago. And it occurred at a Schlumberger, I think it was Schlumberger or Halliburton, one of the two, one of their chemical yards. And one of the contractors went to turn a pump on, and he was severely burnt in the incident, by the way. But speaking to him a few months after, and he's jokingly saying, he says, Rushton, you know, I walk across to the pump switch and I'm smelling the chemical. And I tell myself, boy, I wonder if I throw this switch, if this thing will explode. He throws the switch and a huge explosion happens. Now, I mentioned that to answer your question. If a proper safety analysis is done, especially in a job like that, we talk about what are the risks,
Right.
what are the mitigation for it, what is the standard procedure for a job like this. Worldwide or historically, are the divers tethered? This is what you call the line put onto them. Do you put a line on them? Now, Mr. Budram in his testimony said in the past when he did other pipeline dives on Bird 6, he was tethered to a rope. And he did say that that is a safety mechanism as well, that in the event anything happens, he can be pulled out. So the question is, as you rightly asked, should there have been a tether line on all of them in the event that a Delta P incident were to happen? Now I'm saying if we are sitting in a room and we are looking at all the risks internationally and we said, look, if a Delta P event happens, what do we need to do? You know, what is going to happen to the divers? You know, what is the mitigation fit? And these things are documented. And then part of the job scope is to make sure you as the contractor put these things in place to make sure you look after the safety of your employees. And it raises a big question here, Victor. And I know you come from the library side, that point forting side. And we must never forget that it is the right of the employee to put down their tools and walk away from the job. And if the employer fire you for that, that is a serious court matter. If you as an employee feels that what your employer is asking you to do is unsafe and your life could be at risk, it is your responsibility to put down your tools and walk away. Now, we have a condition existing in this country that makes that to do very, very difficult. So imagine I am driving a truck, Victor, and I go and I tell my boss, I say, boss, listen, the 4 tires on that truck smooth enough. And I think it's a risk for you to be driving that truck today. So either I need a new truck or something, or we change the tires. The boss said, well, take the day off. Now we take a day off, he ain't get paid for that day. But he call up a next man who looking for and say, hey, I have move 2 load or something for me and the truck in the yard. And that fella need the day off. He will drive that truck with the 4 smooth tires. And when he approaches a single lane bridge, mash brakes, he skates, he killed 3-4 people at the end of the day. Now, the state of our economy could cause desperation and cause employees in any organization to put food and welfare of their family before safety on the job. Because the day I complain about the tire or the brakes, that day my family may not get food. And in rural communities like my Arrow, where people have to work today to eat tomorrow, because that's the reality of rural life. You will know that. And when you raise these matters with your employer, you say, well, go home for the day. These are real issues. I'm not saying that is what happened with these gentlemen. But it's just to say in the general working space that if you feel at any time that you are at risk in doing the job that you have been assigned, the primary responsibility lies within yourself to say, I'm not doing it and I'm standing down this job. Because your health and wealth and safety for you to go back home to your family is paramount. And if any employer want to victimize you or send you home for that, we are men like Kyle Taklal saying to deal with that.
Well, I had an experience at one time. I used to work with a company right in Marabella, which doesn't exist anymore. That's Santana. And they were into the production business and heavy workover. And I actually started there as a rastabout first, washing tools and so on. And then I moved to floorman. And I want to share the experience of how I get the Derek Man job before I move up to headman. One day, while we were working in the CL area, that's the area where they utilize steam because of the thickness of the oil. They send steam down the casing to soften the oil while it come up through the tubing using the pumping jack to pull. So we were going to change a seating nipper down to the bottom of the 2 and 3/8 pipe. So we was unbolting the flange. We pumped brine in the hole, quiet the well because those steam well always get trouble. And then we were attempting now, because the well was quiet, we were moving the bolts from around the flange. Down at the steam, the boiler station, the gauger changed shift. And what happened, the daylight gauger down to the steam plant, he were checking and saw certain valves close. And what he did, he was saying, well, who closed off these valves? So he opened the valve, even though we were working on a particular well, which was closed, but he opened the valve to 2 other wells that was interconnected somewhere on the vein to the well that we were working on. And while we raised the flange and we pulled the first length of pipe, and we put on what we used to call the slips to hold the pipe in place, and we're about to put the BOP over now to safety the well, to start to pull the tubing out the hole. The well started to bubble, broop, 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 broop. So the headman at the time say, let me go ahead, we have to get this job done. Now it's contractor. He said, let me get this job done, the supervisor. So the headman say, look, this well coming alive, you know. He said, man, let me make case and get the BOP over there and change the rams and so on. Put the 2 and 3/8 rams inside the BOP. I think we put in the rams before we put the BOP on. But we didn't get a chance to put the BOP on. So what happened, shortly after, the well said, and it blew straight up past the mast, and it stopped. And then it blew again, and it stopped. But you could hear the song that coming from down inside the well, the bubbling sound. So we had a length up the stand-up pipe that we pulled out. What that had the flange on it. So what the supervisor said is, let me put back on pull the length of pipe up into the air, put it back on, screw it, and drop it down back on the wellhead and see if we could put in 2 bolts. So when they pull the pipe up in the air with the haste and the busyness, because we know the well going to blow, so we hustling. So the headman pulling now that length of pipe, and it going across, it going in and swinging on the mast with the block, hook up between some cables and so on there. So the supervisor tell the Derek man, go up there fast and clear that. The Derek man say, he ain't going up. He said that well going and blow, I ain't going up. Now, I wasn't the Derek man, but I jump on the ladder, I run up the ladder, clear the pipe between the cables where it hook up there. Headman pull up, we get it on, we screw it back down, and we came down with it. But what happened, while we came in down, the well started to blow, but hot oil coming out. So we put the safety valve on top, and we didn't even get the bolts on. So what we did, we opened the casing, We open the casing, we put the block on top the pipe as weight, because that block is about 2,000-3,000 pounds.
Yeah.
And we put them there, and we were able to get a couple bolts on. You know what happened? When the pusher who was pushing the rig came, and the supervisor explained what happened, they send the derrick man on holidays. And they make me the temporary derrick man. And that derrick man end up on holidays forever. So I say that to say this. What you are saying, it is a reality that happens within the workplace. Once you fail to follow instruction, even though it may be risky, somewhere along the line the employer is able to send you home, whether through technical means or not. And I think you are right that some mechanism needs to be put in place where when these things happen, not from the industrial court side, but when these things happen, there should be some kind of criminal penalty. If it means we have to review the law along these lines. But we cannot have the employers putting people at risk, asking them to do things that will endanger them and others. And yet to the end of the day, it's just a pat on the back, somebody going home, and things just go as normal.
Well, I can tell you, under the current OSHA laws we have, while we do have OSHA, it is still weak in many areas. I mean, as you can see with this para event, I mean, OSHA was almost last off the block.
Yeah.
While they should have been the ones within hours, the inspector should have stormed the barrier, seize every document, seize every computer, every phone, and keep it in their possession so nobody deletes anything. For a thorough investigation, they turn up there about 3 days after. But I want to make a point with what you said, and something that Mr. Budram said in his testimony. You said when the original derrick man said he's not going up, somebody say this thing urgent, we need to do this thing now.
Yeah.
In Mr. Budram's testimony, he made a comment that urgency always trumps safety. He said that. I distinctively took note when he said that. And that is a culture in the workplace that somehow legislation must stop that. Urgency must never trump safety. And the way how Mr. Budram said it, and I understand his position because that's the norm. That was a normal cultural thing within the organization, perhaps his own organization, the companies that he worked with. But something is urgent, it trumps safety. And in your case, that was the case. And you were lucky, my friend. I can tell you, if luck wasn't on your side that day, that well could have blown with you on top of that rig. And we wouldn't be having this discussion tonight. So you were fortunate. And again, coming out of the Commission of Inquiry, these are the things that we must learn, or the Commission of Inquiry report must make 10, 12, 15, 20 suggestions. And that report, when laid in Parliament, the minister with jurisdiction in those areas must really contemplate bringing legislation. So as I say, nobody who turns up to work on a job site does not go back home at 4:30 in the evening, because we must prevent this from happening. If I were to give you another example, in the mid-80s or early 90s, I think, there was an incident on one of the teak platforms where a particular contractor went to service or clean some of the tanks on the platform. And the first man who went close to the tank fell in. His partner, seeing him fall in, run up to see what's going on. As he watched over the tank, he fall in too. About 4 men ended up on the bottom of that tank, dead. Because the tank had H2S, the hydrogen sulfate gas emanating from it, and you pass out one time, it can kill you. There was an investigation that lasted about 14 days at the Amoco site with the contractor and Amoco and so on. And shortly after that, a rule was passed that every person on a platform must now carry an H2S indicator. So in the event that you are on the perimeter of a platform, of a production well, and there is the slightest hint of hydrogen sulfate, or it smells like rotten egg, you can leave the premises, and you must always know which side the wind is blowing to. So anybody downwind from that scent, you must vacate and stay clear. Now sometimes, only when these types of events happen, must we understand the nature of it, and then we put things in place to make sure it never happens again. I have never heard of an employee dying of H2S poisoning after that event in the industry in the East Coast from where I sit. So coming out of this commission of inquiry, whether there is criminal negligence on anybody's part, whether there will be an opportunity for that later down, whether there will be civil litigation on the part of Mr. Budram, what I can tell you from the evidence presented, from what I've heard and in my own analysis, clearly Paria as the company, LCM as the contracting company, there were clear weaknesses in the system, in that, all parties allowed the fact that, hey, we've done this before and we're comfortable doing it, and you carried on as usual, and it's only the day an incident like this happens, then we are forced to take stock at the end of the day. So I am hoping that the Commission of Inquiry gives a report that we can strengthen our OSHA laws, strengthen our workplace rules. Do you know, under the OSHA law right now, Victor, if I want to build a tank stand at the back of my home, and I give you a contract to come and build the tank stand, and while building the tank stand, something falls on one of your workmen, I, as the owner of the premises, still liable for the death or the injury of your employee. Why? Because the law says that I, as the owner of the premises, have the final liability. Now, how do I defend that in court? I must show proof that Victor Roberts is skilled and competent to build a tank stand. His employees are trained by certification 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And based on what he has presented, I am comfortable and confident that you can work safely in my operation. And if something happens, we go to court. I pull myself out. I say, Mr. Roberts, tell me, you could do the work like all the certification day. And then the liability switches to you. It can be switched to you based on the court. Now, all that is to say, something else that Mr. Budram was questioned on, and some of the attorneys were querying his competency, whether he was skilled to do the job, how much he has experience in commercial diving versus scuba diving, or what you call recreational diving, and so on. Now, in my mind, diving is diving under the water. I think the difference is the depth between commercial and recreation. But the attorneys who question him, and I know, it is not a question for innocent or guilty at the end of the day. I think probably some of the attorneys misconceive what they did to do. But it comes back to the fact that I says under the law that you must be competent via certification to do a particular job. Before I engage you in the contract, I must see that. And if I don't see that, and I allow you to do the work, then I am liable for any event, incident that can happen on the workplace that I am in control of. So there was the question whether Paria has any type of vicarious liability here, right? And I suspect whenever that matter reaches into any type of civil or criminal action at one point in time, those things are going to come up. Whether the contractor was fit to do the job, did Paria do due diligence to make sure that the contractor, now the contractor's been working for 10 years. They've been working fine, they are doing diving, there have never been an incident, everybody, been living happily. But today, something goes wrong, then all the chickens come home to roost. And when the chickens come home to roost, it is good for the rest of us. Because my daughters may work in the energy sector one day. And when one of them goes out to a platform to do an environmental assessment, or one of them has to do something in the compounds in the energy sector, I want my child come home.
Right.
And I hope that when the chickens start to roost by the end of this inquiry, we fix the problems in this sector. And this will not only go for Paria, it will go for Heritage, it will go for Touchstone, it will go for Schlumberger, it's going to go for every participating company in the energy sector, so we do not kill another child in this circumstance. And let me tell you, it is one thing to go to bed and you don't get up the next morning, But for the family of those men, and listening, Mr. Budram, listen, I sit down in my office and I listen to this gentleman, and I picture myself, as big as I am, being sucked into that pipe. And from his testimony, you could see the resilience in this man. This don't give up attitude that he had. And he encouraged the other men, he gave them hope. And there was one other area that was a bit humorous to me, when I think the commissioner asked him, was there any blockage that would stop the rescue effort? He said, but then I now come out.
Yeah.
If I could swim out, you could swim back in.
You know what keep beating me, MP, with this whole situation? Why didn't Paria utilize that window of opportunity that we are seeing from this commission of inquiry here now? Why didn't Paria utilize that window of opportunity and make that attempt to rescue and to save the lives of these individuals? That is what keep beating me when I listen and when I watch this inquiry. Existing was that window of opportunity. And I am trying to understand, why won't a company do all in its power at that time? And I have a serious problem with the Coast Guard also, I have a very, very serious problem with the Coast Guard. Just simply because of their names and the way in which they should be thinking as professionals, as the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard. I cannot see why their instructions was to debar the window of opportunity from being utilized, where one life could have been saved in this whole situation. I really have a problem there.
I'll explain that to you. They didn't know what to do. And I'll tell you why. There is Victor Roberts, Rushton Parry is here. We have William Archie, who is on the command center. We have two guests in the background there. A fire breaks out in this building now. Have we discussed what to do? No, we haven't.
I see your point.
Now, if before we started the program, somebody say, listen, we have no drills planned for today. If you hear the siren or the alarm in this building, I want you to take the step that you came up. When you go head to the back of the building, the door is open. Run to the back and wait for it to get an all clear. We now have a plan in the event that this building catches a fire. I suspect on the day of the event, and as I said, when you do, not the toolbox meeting, the 2 days before meeting, when we bring all the players and say, look, we're going and do this. If something happens, who is the commander of the incident right away? Who chose that lever? I suspect there were good men around the system, but everybody was watching one another. And then clearly, from the management perspective, they didn't have a clue what was happening. All they were concerned is about the PR. They were concerned, and there's some WhatsApp messages going around that I saw a while ago with some names of people that I wouldn't call, that clearly showed that they were more concerned on the evening when the families supposedly stormed the yard to find out what's going on with the family, with their loved ones. And the comment was, hey, we need to get them out of there. Put them in a conference room and put some food. That's to keep them quiet. So clearly, when you have a proper system in place to know who is the commander at the end of the day, I always say Napoleon Bonaparte was one of the most fearful and fearless generals in the war. But with Napoleon, he died in a prison on an island somewhere. Why? His job wasn't to go on the battlefront, His job was to command and control from the hill. Who was that person on the day of the event? What systems they could have put in place? So in the briefing 2 days before, they should say, if this happened, what's the role of the Coast Guard? Coast Guard, can you put 2 scuba men in the event we need your expertise? Or does our Coast Guard have expertise to dive in pipes? We don't know. Right? What was the role of the incident commander? When these men get sucked in, they should have had a documentation as to, hey, who does what and who does what next. That clearly, so 3 hours pass. Mr. Budram had enough time to be pulled out of the riser. 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, he's in the hospital. And he said, hey, what are you doing? The men are alive in the pipe, go for them. And from the recording, from some of the, I think early on when you got the death certificates, when you look at the time of death on some of the death certificates, some of them put them
Horrible.
Saturday, Sunday.
Horrible.
You understand? So we have a lot of lessons to learn. Clearly, Paria had no incident control systems for this particular event. 2, their management, their crisis management failed. And listen, the most funny thing was the media conference. And you had 3 or 4 men speaking to the public, and it was laughable. There was no empathy, no sympathy, and the men were alive in the pipe while that was going on. And this is what the people of this country must understand. And whether the board, right, whether the board had a role to play. Let me tell you, if my business failed in the morning, Victor, I can't blame my employees. Because I control the levers. I control the levers of what I can spend on. I control the lever. If you're doing the work, I get rid of you and give somebody else. So when the business collapses, it is the leadership that has failed. So the board of Paria and the management of Paria, listen, if it was our first world country, them gone long time. They would have done the honorable thing and stepped down. You know why? Because 4 men lost their lives. And knowing the fact that there was a window of opportunity to go for them, and you prevented the families from going down there, who were diving people as well. Like Mr. Korban's son, he's a A-class diver as far as I understand. Mr. Budram in his testimony, he says as he come out, he said, boy, go down, your father right behind me. And the Coast Guard says no. In the earlier responses that we got, the earlier information that was circulated, I don't know how true it was, but there was a claim that the Coast Guard had firearms and stopped people from going anywhere close to that.
You want me to tell you something, MP? And I mean no disrespect to anyone. But if it was my father,
You do going down?
the Coast Guard would have to kill me.
I suspect.
The Coast Guard would have to shot me. Now, I meant no disrespect to anybody, not talking about Victor Roberts.
Yeah.
Because you cannot tell me that a life can be saved. And some Coast Guard, because he have an instruction from some company telling me, leave my father, my brother, my sister, my co-worker, or whoever below the sea, when I know that there is a possibility that life can be saved. Yeah. And I am wondering, because I was there when Stuart Young came down. And I am still trying to understand what Stuart Young said on that afternoon really makes sense to anything that was happening. I am wondering. But I want to go back to something that you said earlier on, and I don't want that to pass for a million reasons. Now, you are hoping that the information that comes out from the Commission of Inquiry would be able to prevent further incidents from taking place.
Yeah.
I want to tell you, MP, that I have no confidence whatsoever that the information that comes out there, that this government that sit in office will do anything, and I will give you an example why. I remember that Judith Jones brought a report,
The health sector.
about the abuse
Right. You see, abuse of the
children in those homes.
Yeah.
And she also brought with that recommendations that needed to be implemented immediately. I was shocked a couple days ago when I saw the Child Protection Unit put a statement in the public domain that 400 cases of abuse is reported every month. I am shocked to know that we had a guest here who work temporarily in some of those homes and state that the abuse of these children is still going on. So then, what was the whole idea about getting ex-Justice Judy Jones to look into all these allegations with her team, put together a report, put together steps that must be taken immediately? And I mean, I have the report in my possession. I'm speaking about detail as to what happened. And this government, Keith Rowley and Ayanna Webster Roy, sit down with that report, whether in their handbag or in their pocket or wherever, for all these months, and never made mention until the opposition received word that this report was in their possession, and up to today
They've done nothing.
They have done absolutely nothing. So this commission of inquiry, while I welcome it, but under this government, I have no confidence, MP, that anything will be put in place to protect going forward or to prosecute if there's criminal negligence.
Yeah.
That is my position.
And I agree with you. And I can tell you the only commission of inquiry, in my recollection, where actual recommendations were made was of the off inquiry. And coming out of that inquiry, procurement legislation came out. Strengthening of certain things in tongue and country and planning and some strength of that. And that happened under a partnership administration. Under another previous UNC administration, when that first SABGA report came out, several pieces of legislation that was initiated by Prime Minister Pandey to bring things like the Children's Authority and a lot of those, there were recommendations inside there that laws were brought before the Parliament. But you know, there is a signature with the PNM. When the UNC is in government, probably to our own demise as well sometimes, we concentrate on good law. We concentrate on putting good legislation for the health, wealth, and safety of the citizenry. We brought the Equal Opportunity Commission. We brought integrity in public life. We brought so many different pieces of law with the intention to strengthen public officers, public operation, governance. But look at the PNM. The PNM waters down everything. So they have taken out all the teeth from the Procurement Act. They've removed powers. And look, the Attorney General come and say that we're not ready. But Mr. Lalchan sits at a Joint Select Committee meeting a couple of weeks ago and said, what are we waiting on? We are ready to go. But you see, they've watered it down so the corruption and the skullduggery could continue. That's why they've watered it down. You tell me that the Attorney General bring all kind of fancy law, explain your wealth, follow the money. And up to today, we can't prosecute one man. They keep talking about the anti-gang bill, and because, you know, we didn't support the anti-gang bill, and, you know, because we said after 3 years, we give you another 3 years, you did nothing. You shut down a gang, you want another 2 years again? They talked about the bail amendment bill, same thing, you know, they want to hold you for 120 days. But my question is, to anybody, how much people get locked up so far for the possession of arms and ammunition have come out and have run afoul of the law again? My thing is that the government keeps trying to put little plasters without trying to figure out the root cause analysis. And I'll give you the example of the scrap iron industry. You shut an entire industry down because some men running up and chopping the copper wires, which affected my constituency very, very badly, because when they feel they're chopping copper, they're chopping fiber. Now the industry itself employs a lot of families on the low end. Rather than try to increase the policing of the system, put more permitting system, put more inspectors in the yards, you shut down an entire industry. This government like to push what you call the nuclear button and shut things down. We rather than fix the issues in Petrochemical Refinery, we shut it down, right? We shut it down for a number of reasons, some which you may say, and many may know.
Yeah.
But there is no effort, and that is how a lazy, careless government operates. They are absolutely lazy. Imagine Rohan Sinanan could come and tell me every time he had no money to fix road. No money. But the government borrows $9 billion in 3 years under the pretext of fixing road. And where we are today? Manzanilla underwater, half of the road break away and gone. Half of Tabakit almost slipped down to cliff. Right now a truck carrying goods can't go through Table Land because of the landslips. The country is collapsing all around because of laziness and incompetence of this government. And if they can't lead and they can't govern, oh God, man, save us.
Well, today the SS Erie Road in Corey Village by Skinner Trace collapsed, right? The end of it.
Yeah.
We have Clark Road in Penal cut off. We have Chatham on the verge of cutting off, where the whole of Cedrus will be affected. They will have to take boat to come out from Cedrus. And you are right. You see, this government that we call the Keith Rowley government, it is a clear case where they do not understand what governance is all about. So they believe that buffing you and blaming Kamala and blaming the opposition is what will fix the problem in this country. But Trinidad and Tobago have to understand, in order for this country to fix, you have to get rid of the PNM.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is as plain as it could be. But let me just go back to the Commission of Inquiry a little bit.
Yeah.
As I was saying, I have no confidence. While I welcome what is happening, the information that is coming out, and Trinidad and Tobago will have a clear understanding as to where the negligence lie in this matter. But one of my issues is that would this Commission of Inquiry, apart from Budram information, have any solid facts in relation to what really took place in terms of the preparation for this job? Because from where I sit, I saw where so many time has lapsed, and the preserving of the scene is another issue. The preserving of documents is another issue. And seeing the way in which this government behave, and seeing the way in which Rowley have appointed his personal people to the hem of these institutions, I am saying, would the Commission really get the real true paperwork that were there prior to this commission, because too much time lapse. We have not seen where the government have instructed that all the necessary documentation be seized by a competent authority, and in this case I really don't know who the competent authority may be, because
So
I can't say
in law, it is the OSHA inspector. In this particular case, whenever there is an incident that causes the loss of life, the OSHA inspector has the power to search and seize. And this is why I said 3 days after Mr. Inspector turns up, I don't know what he was waiting on. Again, he may have been still in shell shock that he's been called to do that. He know what to do. But the law is clear. Where there is a loss of life in the workplace, the inspector, the OSHA inspector comes in, he does a preliminary inquiry, and then he seizes every single document, computers, he asks for emails and so on. And I want to tell you how it is one law for the UNC and one law for the PNM. And I must go down here. When Kid Rowley made up this story about email gate, and the country applaud him and the media run him down too and applaud him for that, because people in the UNC want to murder people. And every competent authority in the world said the email was fake besides him. You know, the police went within a day and take laptop, phone, computer, everything. Up to today, Nelson Gate, and not a piece of paper have been seized as yet to preserve evidence, as you say.
So you understand why I said just now, I don't know who the competent authority is. It's just sarcasm to say it can't be the police. It definitely can't be the commissioner, the acting commissioner of police. But I think that, and again, I'm going to ask you one of the hardest questions. And the hardest question is, should there be a penalty when the OSHA inspector failed to perform his duty? In this case, where he turns up 3 days after the fact. You see, why I'm saying that penalties must be put in place is to avoid this window of opportunity for corruption, to have papers changed and backdate and signed and carry it here and get stamped and signed and put. Look, I have heard where allegations were made that there on the site the necessary protective gears weren't there. I heard, and a matter of fact, I saw trucks going into the site on that day carrying a number of equipments. Now somebody could say, well, those equipments was for the rescue effort. They could say that. But if that is the case, then why wasn't these equipments on site in the first place to have a rescue done if something should occur?
So when you're doing a job safety analysis, so when we are bidding for contracts and so on, there is something called a risk mitigation matrix. So you highlight a particular incident and then you give it a weighting in terms of probability. So the probability could be low, but the impact could be high. So this matrix tells you if there is a low probability but a high impact, we need to put some equipment there just in case. Because although it may not happen, but if it happens, the impact will be high. Now this has a cost to go with it. And I want you to remember what I'm going to say here now. Heritage and Paria, by virtue of the nature of its beginning, it was 2 parts of a 3-part operation, which Guaracara, which is the refinery component. And I had the opportunity to look at financial data of these two companies. And I will ask a question to the board of Paria. Did you instruct the management of Paria to keep your costs low for our profit margin to be high to justify why we shut Petrotrin down and break it into two new companies and come back to the course? Putting a standby rescue team could have cost $100,000 or $200,000 more on the job. But because the occurrence might have had a low risk, but we are paying that. So the question is, how much other safety mechanisms in the operation that carries a low probability does Paria cut to make sure that they turn a profit, to justify to a board that the political directorate made a good decision by breaking Petrotrin into three pieces? And I put that outside there for people to understand that safety is a cost that people just cut first, especially when you have a low probability of something. But why are we spending that money for? But it only comes to the front the day something happens. So people may say, well, you know, the political directorate has no play in this. But they buy trouble wholesale. If I'm the Minister of Energy and I have no horse in the race, and an incident like this happen, I put everybody under the bus. All you explain all yourself to the people of this country. Explain all yourself to the police, to OSHA. But when you have a government that feels that they must throw a red herring to divert attention from themselves, the government can buy this trouble wholesale, which they don't have to. But their modus operandi puts them in there. So the country sees it. So the question we have to ask, why the government has taken the approach? Why did they purposely slow this commission of inquiry down? The first commissioner left because he couldn't get a chair to sit down on. I surprised Rowley didn't fire this one. When he say that they pull table and chair from the Prime Minister's office, he hope when the Prime Minister come back, he have a table and a chair to sit down on. I surprised Rowley didn't fire he too for making that comment. But the issue here is that clearly we need to determine whether costs were cut in terms of the provision for safety.
Yes,
because Coast Guard, they come in there to sit down and do nothing for free. You have to pay the Coast Guard. You have to pay their vessel to be on standby. If a tug has to be on standby for 5 hours during the job, you have to pay that tug. So nothing in the operation comes for free. So if a real analysis was done, the contract might have been, what, $1 million? And if you had to put all the safety mechanisms, it could be $10 million. So are we going to spend $9 million for something that we don't believe will ever happen in this life?
But added to that, we also had to look at the timing that the Coast Guard came, because the Coast Guard put out a statement where they was called to the site.
Yeah, so they wanted no
So there was nowhere wrong at the time of the actual work being done.
So what you call them for? To do what? To stand up and watch man the place? Would you understand that they may have had rescue divers competent to go down there and look for these fellas? I could tell you that you telling recreational divers or even these Coast Guard divers to go down in a pipe. Listen, not everybody could operate in confined spaces, you know. Yeah. They need a special type of diver that is go down in caves and do exploration. You know, slip through little crack and hole and so on. Now if you listen to Mr. Bodram's testimony, that he was on his back, basically kicking with one leg, because one of his arms were coiled to the back of him and he didn't have the room to maneuver the arm back. And his nose, between his nose and the water, was 6 inches. Now, you had to be psychologically ready to deal with that. So, it comes back down. Delta P incidents have happened all over the world. I mean, I've Googled it. I've seen videos of other incidents. I've seen what happens when there's a little leak on the line and it can suck in marine animals in a jiffy. If you took this as being a real event, just the cost to have standby and safety mechanisms for that in the event of it happening can send the cost of a job very, very high. But then that is the nature of the business. That is the nature of the job that we're in, right? And if, I think what I like about this commission of inquiry compared to the others that have passed, all the documents that have been submitted, witness statements are online. So you can pull down the witness statement for everybody who have submitted. So let's say that there is some type of cover-up and they get instructions, you know, cover this, but we have access to all the documents. You, Victor Roberts, can, within your own deliberate judgment, download the documents and read it yourself and come to your own conclusions as well. So that's one good part about it. I think the fact that I don't agree, this is my personal opinion, that this inquiry should have been done in public. I think it's highly emotive. We must remember that lawyers are human beings as well. So even if an attorney wants to probe a little more, not Mr. Boodram alone, but anybody else who comes to testify, but they too can be affected emotionally at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So while you would have wanted to get the truth and the absolute truth, because it's highly emotive, that may not happen. But it's before the cameras, it's before the country to see. You know, we have to take it as it is. And I mean, as you say, I agree with you. I really don't feel under this administration that anything will be done. But there is hope. There is hope that within the shortest time frame, the United National Congress will return to government. I want to tell you, Victor, that as much as things are bad in this country in terms of our economic performance, in terms of the government's performance in creating an environment for business and growth, I do believe we have the fiscal and monetary space to make changes. I do believe we have a country that is rich in resources, you know, in our geography, in our climate, in the nature of our people, that can make Trinidad and Tobago an attractive investment climate, but not under Keith Rowley, not under the PNM, and not under a level 3 warning from the United States State Department. We're telling basically citizens of the United States, don't go to Trinidad. That's what a level 3 is.
Yes, of course.
And then one day after, the United Kingdom does the same. And to the man on the street, well, so what? Well, so what means when an investor who has to come to Trinidad and he has to work with 50 employees, specialists, are these people going to be safe in Trinidad? But better we go Guyana and spend money. You know, so all these things the world is looking at. The world is looking at this commission of inquiry, and the world will judge us. The day when the police tear gassed our citizens in Queen's Park West, that's at the doorstep of our foreign multinationals. So when you find the president of BG and BP and then watching through the window and see police tear gassing Trinidadians and Tobagonians, what message are they sending to their head office in St. James Street in London? Is Trinidad still a good place to invest money in? These are things that, you know, I mean, there is no thought process how these things impact us at the end of the day. And then you have Amory Brown comes and tell us, hey, tell the media, listen, we must always show Trinidad in a positive light. As leaders, we have a duty, and that the media must stop scandalizing the government. But listen, the Fourth Estate have a job to do. It is to keep all of us honest. It is to keep the judiciary, the executive, the legislature honest. And the day the media stop doing their job, then we in for hell of a ride. So I keep saying that the media must get more probative. They must ask harder questions, and do not go to Whitehall or the diplomatic center and cower to Dr. Keith Rowley. Ask the hard questions. Why isn't our seasoned journalists, the men who me and you grew up and know, why are they not at press briefings to ask questions? But a set of children who may be now learning, I am not discounting any of their theory and their training, and they may get there in a year, 2 times. Well, last you hear a hard question at one of those briefings. Dr. Rowley's not asked hard questions at all, and they get away with it, and that must stop. That must stop.
I have to commend you that you still have hope in the media.
Where there is life, there is always hope, Victor.
But from where I sit, the media houses in this country is a whole pack of garbage. And I will tell you why I am saying that, MP. When you have the media, who ought to be the checks and balance within our democracy, and the media now confine their professionalism to adhering to Keith Rowley and to bowing to Keith Rowley and to shine Keith Rowley shoes, I have no choice but to disregard these so-called media houses in this country who tend to bring stories in favor of the government. All I am saying is this: I am not asking the media houses to like the UNC, you know. I am asking the media houses just print the truth. That's all I asking. And once you cannot print the truth and bring the reality to the forefront that the child could see, then from where I sit, media house in this country, garbage, waste of time. But I commend you still having hope. But I have no hope in them. And MP, I have no hope in them because let me tell you something. The media is conspiring and helping this government to destroy the future of this country. The media is helping this government to destroy the future generation of this country. The media is helping the government not to attract foreign investors in this country. And until the people of the country stand up and demand what is right in this country, is until this country will continue to go down in the pipeline.
Nice term.
In the pipeline.
Yeah.
And it's only a matter of time before this country is pronounced dead by international agencies. Right now we are on the way, you know. Right now the Powini Hospital, because when they're telling your citizens to reconsider comment, the Powini Hospital already. So they put Trinidad and Tobago in the hospital already. It's only a matter of time that the international community put us in the grave. And until people wake up and see the opportunities that they had under the People's Partnership, led by Kamla Persad-Bissessar and individuals like you and others, is until this country will remain in the pipeline. And we are to wake up and come out of this syndrome that we in. We are to wake up and come out of this line that the PNM have us in and raise our noses. If it's only 6 inches above water, I am saying that the time to do it is now, and the day to do it is today.
And I want to commend you for the efforts that you make, Victor. I want to commend the fact that programs like Douglas Politics, like your own program, it fills that gap that, you know, your position on the media of telling only one side of the story, and it's slant at times. I don't know if you read some of the opinions at times, right, from some key journalists. You would read their articles and they are always very critical of the PNM, but you know in the last 2 paragraphs they say, but the UNC do it too. They say, but the UNC do it too. So all our is the same thing. So they are ashamed of the government of the day, but they are ashamed to say that they were wrong. So you know what? They throw in Kamla Persad-Bissessar and the UNC somewhere inside to make it all right. But there are facts that we must never dispute. Under Kamla Persad-Bissessar, her administration, we achieved $1.5 billion in FDI annually for 5 years. That is a factor. We had foreign direct investors lining up to come to Trinidad because the environment and the climate was one of love and care.
Yeah.
But look what's happening. Piarco International Airport as an example. You always hear the airport authority say we win 10 award and 5 award and 3 award, the best airport in this side of the world. But yet 2 of the biggest international airline pass we straight and go on Aruba and somewhere to set up their shop. Why? You have Chaguaramas, which is the safest port in the Caribbean. It is a shelter for cruise ships, for the yachting industry. But one of the best shipbuilders in the world pass we straight and go on Guyana. Why? They have no confidence in the governance of the Keith Rowley administration.
But why should they have confidence, MP, when we have seen an administration who stood up publicly, not only locally but into international jurisdiction, and lie. So how would they have confidence? How could any investor believe in a government to bring the money and the people here when you have Prime Minister lying? Rowley is a liar, and I are saying it plain. Reginald Amor is another liar. We have seen from the inception with Delcy Rodriguez coming to this country, we have seen where Stuart Young and Rowley and the whole, Stuart Young tell us, as the Minister of National Security, what Stuart Young tell us, they did not know who was on that plane. How this is some of the things that the media houses would not publish on the front page.
Forget the plane, the fact that these people went to the Prime Minister's residence and the Prime Minister said he didn't know the people in the background. But I tell you this, you see, this is where the media falls short as well. I sure Rushton Parry, William Archie, and Victor Roberts can't end up in the Prime Minister's office without somebody putting their ID card in front, do a body check, a watch check, a gun check, and then a note comes somewhere inside to the protocol office and say, hey, look, Roberts, Parry, and Archie come to see the Prime Minister. Yeah. And that note comes to the Prime Minister's special branch. Has to go to the PM and say, PM, look, we have 4 men come to see you. Want to see them? No. Send them back. So there's a protocol in place. You can't turn up in the Prime Minister's office yet. So you see, the media refuses to ask these simple questions, right? Did these fellas just walk in unannounced and ask for 2 doubles? No, they didn't. There was a protocol in place to vet them, to clear them, special branch, the greatest of respect to them as a security organization. I am sure they would have had to done checks, getting names from the manifest, the plane. Did the plane land in Piarco with these people without a manifest saying who they were?
Remember, we had documentation where instructions went to customs and exile in Piarco in relation to them. I went back and checked as to how a delegation operates from one country to another. And they could have, they had to know exactly who was on that plane. Before that plane, a matter of fact, they had known who was the delegation, they have known all the delegates that were coming.
So when special branch would have red flagged those names and know that Delcy Rodriguez and the other person, they were on the no-fly list. No-fly list for the United States government, right? But you see, I want to just reverse back to one quick point. When you talk about the untruthfulness, which is a more parliamentary approved term for the Prime Minister and the Attorney General.
Yeah, I like liars.
Right. But you know, the bigger question is, if a foreign direct investor doesn't have the confidence that when I come to Trinidad and I end up in a legal matter, that the legal system would be fair and square. And I want to refer your attention to the judgment that was handed down in Guyana last week in the case versus Rams Logistics and the Guyanese government with a matter on the local content law. And one of the commentary that Mr. Rampersad made when he spoke to the media in Guyana, and just remember, Rams Logistics is a foreign direct investor in Guyana. And his comment was, he is satisfied that there is equality before the law in Guyana as a foreign investor. Right? Now, do you think any foreign investor, looking at the madness that went on with the Attorney General, Nelson Gate, do you think any foreign investor can be comfortable that if they come to Trinidad and their matter reaches before the courts in this Trinidad, they have confidence that they will be judged fair and square, as how Mr. Rampersad felt when the Guyanese court ruled in his favor?
Let me answer that question. I want to answer that question for you. And the answer to that is a big resounding no, and I will tell you why. When you have Dillian Johnson hiding in the UK, and people in Trinidad and Tobago doesn't want to find out why Dillian Johnson is hiding in the UK, And if you understand why Dillion Johnson is hiding in the UK, you will understand the allegations that Dillion Johnson brought against the Chief Justice of this country. And when you have those allegations hanging over the Chief Justice head, and then you have a Prime Minister who will say to the Law Association, which are now given right to say to the Law Association, you know, because the Law Association stand up and defend lying Reginald Amor. So when the Law Association had serious questions about the Chief Justice and the Prime Minister in his capacity, who have the authority to appoint the tribunal, come and say that, look, he don't see enough evidence to appoint a tribunal. Why the international business sector must have confidence in our judicial system when we have serious allegations, not only over the head of the Chief Justice, but over the head of the Prime Minister, over the head of the President of the Republic, over the head of the Attorney General, over the head of the Minister of Youth, over the head of the former Minister, the former Attorney General, a matter of fact, over the head of everybody from Camille Robinson Regis come up. So why, how would private or foreign investors really think about investing the money in Trinidad? They could never say to this country that there is fairness in the judicial system. And I'm not asking you to say that, MP. I am saying it. There is no confidence in the Law Association. While we have some lawyers who is brilliant and who stood up against the Attorney General, when you look at the senior counsels who supported Amor and talk about he's a good boy, and the senior counsels who, according to Al-Wari, who said them gave advice in relation to this whole bribe and conspiracy and misconduct and misbehavior and all that happened with Nelson. We had a witness in protective custody, and that witness was poisoned. And that is the witness who tell this country that an Attorney General asked him to place a bug in a UNC Senator office. And while he was in protective custody, he was poisoned, dead like Rover, all over. And this is what we have to face. We had Officer Samaru, who pointed out and who made known the allegations of what purported to be Faris Al-Wari children with machine guns. And what happened to Officer Samaru? Officer Samaru was found dead. They appoint some hierarchy of the defense force who now have a property, a big $1 million property in some gated community, and they determined that the cause of death was suicide. When the second autopsy took place, then we understand that there was several broken ribs that was caused by blunt force trauma to Officer Samaru rib cage, and a shot to the back of his head. And what we hear, it will be referred to for further investigations. We have seen, and tonight I want to ask the question again. I want to ask the question, if the office of the Director of Public Prosecution, if there is political contamination, I am asking that question. Because I cannot see that today we have so much investigation on the deaths between the police commissioner, acting commissioner, and the DPP for years, as far back as 2016 with Camille Robinson Regis, with $143,800. And to date, the country cannot get an answer. We have so many allegations. Gary Griffith tell us that the fake oil is alive and well. Today, we can't hear nothing from Jacob. We have seen a number of other situations where a $4.4 million show up in an account of Foster Cummins. We have heard that this money comes out of another government state agency. We ain't hearing nothing. We have seen Vincent Nelson telling this country that Keith Scotland was his attorney. We have seen Vincent Nelson telling this country that K.Y. Singh was his attorney. And when I check in 2019, I am seeing K.Y. Singh as a member of the Police Service Commission. I have also seen allegation where Faris Alwari sold the same Porsche Cayenne to K.Y. Singh. That is something that the opposition leader brought to the forefront. And this idiot we have for acting commissioner of police telling the opposition leader that he needs help to find witness in that matter. So when you look at what is happening within this country, it is a clear case where the political directorate have implanted individual in strategic positions that even though all these allegations will come to the public domain, there wouldn't be any result.
And what that means is that just as how we have infrastructure that is crumbling in this country, our institutions have crumbled. And if you look at a documentary called The Making of a Dictator, institutional weakening is one of the first criteria. If you saw what happened in Venezuela, Venezuela was one of the strongest democracies in the world, right? And all of a sudden, you have the Chavistas came in and he put in all these people in the judiciary, and the judiciary turned pro-Chavista, and then you have all institutions. And what you have today is every institution has been, watered down. It has been infiltrated. That no institution that you can have trust and faith in. When you have the Minister of Finance, by simple majority, inserts it himself and gives himself the power to demand and command information from the central bank, the HR division, to know how much people get in pay. There's a problem. When you have the Minister of Finance is giving direction to the central banks to make statistics because they purposely starved the new planning organization they've been boasting for the last 7 years, that is something to be concerned. You're making your own data to drive how you spend money in this country. So the trust is being lost. The country, the people no longer trust anything that they have to say. And you will get information and they will paint one picture for you. And if you challenge it, then you're not patriotic. You understand? If you challenge anything that they say, you're not patriotic. You're not Trinidad and Tobago. I tell a man, I just pay all my tax, right? I just follow every law. I wear my seatbelt. I just go to a function and everybody just be quiet when they sing the national anthem, and my whole voice I just sing it. You know why? Because I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of my heritage. I'm proud of the country that I live in. And when I go to school functions, I go to any function and I say, as bad as I sound, when they hear the MP sing the national anthem, the next time they will sing it. And so we have a complete collapse of our institutions. The pride that you want your citizens to have in your country. The mere fact that there is a whole bunch of people that are losing hope. It's like you're in the wilderness, and my father always said, when you're in the wilderness, the wind talks to you. And that's the problem we're facing. And this country has been on autopilot for the greater part of 7 years. You have a government that has been trying to run this country looking in the rearview mirror. And you can't drive forward looking in the rearview mirror. You have to take your eyes off the past and look towards the future. Use our strategic advantage to put us in a better place. But again, they lack the competence, they lack the qualification, they lack the vision, they lack the insight. And really and truly, it's really a case of the blind leading the blind in the People's National Movement. Why it is you think that they had to renew the board of the Civil Aviation Authority with the same men who's been there for years? Because they can't find nobody else. Competent professional people, they are now refusing to associate themselves with the PNM. That's why they have a shortage of manpower on them state boards. Because reasonably well thinking people say, no, me I want no part of you. Right? Because the minute I go by you and I can't follow your dictator, you know, we go be in trouble. So I tell them, stay out. And that is the things that is dragging us down into that very same pipeline you talk about. And just as the men who are in that pipeline, we are struggling to survive. And let me tell you, the people who are hurting is the people at the lowest end of the ladder.
Yeah.
The people who are hurting is the people at the lowest rung of that ladder, and they're hurting badly, right? And when you sit at a joint select committee and you ask the National Self-Help Company, in my case, why it is that 405 applications in the Mara constituency remain outstanding since 2016, there is no answer. I have 25 applications for people roof that get blown away in 2021. 1 year and 2 months after, they can't get a payment. But on some constituencies along the East-West corridor, the roof them blow out Friday. By Monday morning, MPs were handing out checks. But you know what was the response? Mayor, people filed the wrong paper, didn't fill it out correctly. They say we ain't out to fill out form. That is the lame type of excuse that you are given. And I mean, it goes along a whole line of victimization. You know, they've coined geographic discrimination. But listen, at the end of the day, we are in a perilous place, and that the government does not know what to do. I think some of them know what to do, but they don't know how to do it. And they refuse to ask for help. They refuse to allow the opposition, and they refuse, and this is a good point, they refuse to allow the opposition to help them, because we love this country. We love this country, and if you allow us to give you a hand, we will. But you don't want that. You go alone, you're dead alone, that is your problem.
Well, we already said it quite plain that he wants to hear nothing from Kamala and the opposition.
That's correct.
And you was developing a very important point when you're saying they know what to do, but they don't know how to do it. Well, I want to help them tonight to tell them how to do it. It is as easy as getting a pen, a sheet of paper, write your resignation, all of your hand it in, and just let us restart the process. MP, few minutes that we have remain. What would you like to tell your constituency? 1, and 2, would you and your constituency join the march that would be coming on the 10th of December, the 6th of January, and on the 13th, which is Black Friday, where we will be asking the country to wear black? If you're home, just stay, anything black, put it on. What would you want to tell your constituency tonight?
First of all, I want to give you the commitment that you have my 100% support on that movement. I will mobilize as much people as I can to lend support. In numbers, we have strength on that day. And I also want to tell my constituents at the end of the day that, you know, as an opposition MP, I started by saying there are some tools that we have that the parliament gives us to do our jobs.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, we don't get funding to patch potholes and to fix drains and so on, which, you know, at the end of the day, there is a demand. And, you know, when your constituents start calling you minister, well, then you know you're in trouble. They love you, and they expect that you should be able to do certain things.
Yeah, correct.
But we've reached the point where that the people must make a stand. And I believe in lawful protest. I believe in the lawful protest, the right of citizens to do things lawfully. As a member of parliament who have sworn oath to uphold the law and the constitution, I will not encourage anybody to break the law. But to stand firmly, to have your voice be heard, I think we need to show that type of strength going forward now. And if people were comfortable all the time, think about your children, think about your grandchildren, think about the sacrifices a lot of people are making, and join the cause, join the chorus. And I will do my best, Victor. I think it's an excellent move, and it's really to say, all right, all the time we complaining, your MP are doing nothing, let's show what we could do to
yes, sir.
And come out and say you've had enough. And don't slip back and say, well, you know, that's somebody else's problem. And that's the problem we face sometimes in this country. That is Victor's problem down there, right? But it is all of our problem. And if the problem ain't reach you yet, it's coming. It's coming.
Correct.
So Victor, you have my full support on this. I will do whatever I can in terms of mobilizing people from the Myra constituency to join, if not on all the days, at least one of the day.
Right.
And I too may make a little walk on that day with you to show the solidarity with you, because I think it's about time that you know, we up this thing a little bit. I think the government has, they feel comfortable that, all right, well, you know, we ain't riot yet. And I'm not saying that we must go and riot, but there's strength in numbers and the voices must be heard. So I want to commend you again for your own program. I mean, I want to thank Anil for his Douglas Politics in terms of the delivery, in terms of filling the gap that traditional media has left.
Yeah.
Because while, you know, in Anil's own format, you know, he can be a bit humorous at times, we like humor. I always tell people, if, you know, Dr. Munilal and MP Padarat and so on, and even Saddam weren't as, you know, fearless and do things with flair, you know, then half of the people may not even look at the parliamentary channel, because we are a culture like that. We wall bacchanal, we want a bit of humor, you want a bit of intrigue. But if these fellas are not there, but we're watching the parliament channel for.
Yeah.
So there's a role for everyone, and I think at the end of the day, Trinidadians and Tobagonians, I think, you know, we are a young nation, and what we are going through is really our teething problems. When you look at older democracies in Europe and in America and so on, they have their own share of problems, but we are a young nation, and we're trying to find our space. We're trying to find, you know, what is more common that keeps us together than what tears us apart. And I believe in time we will get there, and we'll have the type of solidarity, we'll have the type of governance that's going to make sure that all of us move forward at the same time. The governance system we have is winners take all, and one man moves forward, the next one stay in the back. That will not work in a 21st century democracy like ours, where you have people who can fact check you in 10 seconds. So it's not like the junction politics of the 1980s, when you can go on a junction, say anything, one drunk man cuss you and the police move him. But today you make a comment, anything I say here tonight, somebody could go on Facebook, on Google, and fact check me and say, well, you know, Parry, you're being untruthful.
Yeah, correct.
And then they hold you to account. So I think the system of governance is going to change. I think the way our young people are measuring us, that is going to change as well. It's going to take some time, and I think with efforts like what you are doing, Victor, which is highly commendable, I think we will get there. And as I close, as I said, you know, you have my full support going forward. And thank you again for having me this evening.
MP Parry, I want to thank you very much. Of course, the honor here is ours for you taking time off from your busy workload, and I know it's a lot because, of course, I think you have one of the larger constituencies to deal with. And we want to thank you for taking the time out to be here. On behalf of Douglas Politics, especially Anil Roberts, I want to echo that sentiment to you. And I know that this would not, it probably may just be the first opportunity, but certainly it would not be the last where you would be on this program and other programs that we have going on. So I want to thank Archie for a job well done as usual, and I also want to thank the viewers, those who tune in, those who comment. Whether you comment negative or you comment positive as usual, it's your choice. It's a democracy. Even in commenting, it's a democracy. So we want to thank you for your patience with us, for the intrusion in your homes at this hour. And we want to say a special good night to Anil Roberts and the whole UNC family, especially the honorable political leader, Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar. Until then, we will be in our push west tomorrow, where we will be continuing our mobilization drive. That's the constituency of Chairman and MP Dave Tanko. So we invite you to join us, and we ask for your continuance support in relation to our march that will be taking place on the 10th of December from Palo Seco Junction to San Fernando, and of course the second phase from Sando to Chaguanas, and the final phase from Chaguanas to Port of Spain, which will be on the 13th of February, which is Black Friday 2023. So until then, be safe. I know nobody is safe out there. Be safe, stay blessed. We out. Good night.
Good night.
I was begging him to stay, but I didn't want him to leave this side. I was begging him to stay, but I said, well, let me go back for him and myself. I tell him that I'm sure he's gonna be here if I didn't go back at least 100% sure that nobody can tell me about all that shit about can't rescue people. I dive in a pipe before that and born inside the riser on same bird 6. I went inside that on that pipe herself, Colin Piper. I went in that and put in a soft paper gasket because we couldn't install it from the outside because the surgeons was slamming against it. I went in the pipe on that scuba self. Barry, I'm talking talk about scuba and scuba for all the years we diving in there. Scuba, every company coming there was scuba for all the years.